Hi there. In this video, in addition to the charts, we'll also look into the top 10 news in the coming week that would impact the price of the crypto in this category. So let's start with the charts of Ripple, and these are education content only, not financial advice. A project success depends on many factors. So for Ripple, this is the weekly view with the Wyckoff tags. The blue ones are the distribution cycle stages, and the orange ones are the accumulation cycle stages. We'll come back to this quickly in just a minute. We'll look into the micro view first. That's the daily chart. So last time when we talked about this, the market drop hasn't happened. You can call it a crash or just a drop. However, in the last session, we did talk about that for the case of Ripple, it has been basically traveling through sideways. So it's not a surprise for the downtrend to continue, just that it has accelerated. And I have clearly mentioned a couple of times, October 10th, for the case of Ripple, it has dropped to around 0.78. So the current price level isn't even near to what it did in October last year. All right, so it is taking a pause, basically across the board is more or less the same, taking a pause during this weekend period. But as soon as Asia gets to Monday, things would change. And last time we talked about June 23rd, probably not last time, it's probably a couple of weeks back when XRP's price was still within the medium-term downtrend. The price has now dropped back to the medium downtrend, okay? So when did that happen? It actually started somewhere last year, around July, okay? Then we're getting back to that particular medium-term channel after almost a year. Let's see, by the time we get to the third week of June, like in about two and a half weeks time, whether it is still able to maintain above the red key level of 1.05. So this is the current key level, key support level. If it successfully maintained above this, by the time it gets closer to this date, this channel ceiling may still have effect. Okay, that's the first point. The second, however, is that given the rate of descent is so rapid right now, it is still difficult to measure, okay, the current range of the channel, the gap, the width of the channel isn't that broad. Assuming this is how it is going to happen, okay, without trading outside of this channel. Before the 23rd, we'll get another confirmation over here. So, you know the two C's if you have been with me for a while. The two C's meaning whenever the price trades towards such a gap, there are only one of the two options. Either it continues, the first C, okay, meaning it breaks the support. Okay, that's the significance for the continued decision. The big guys says we're not going to get in yet, so people keep selling. However, the change is the next C, meaning probably some institutional whales start to get in and the price doesn't drop any further, doesn't break any support. In that case, it has to break the ceiling of a downtrend. So at least it trades sideways. And if more people start to get in and buy the dip, it would challenge the previous support key level, now turns resistance. So the next key level above is 1.23. All right, so that's the micro view, how this can happen. Remember the reference point over here. Now we get to the big picture and understand how deep it can go. So I shared before the accumulation cycle back in 2002 started in May all the way into November 2024, that 2.5-year period, the price of Ripple stayed within 30 cents to 70 cents. Okay, the blue key level and the yellow key level. Right now, we are still way above it. So don't be surprised if the price really drops to this range, okay, to start the accumulation cycle. It is stepping into the panic sell whale spy period, but we haven't seen the panic overstage yet. Okay, after that panic overstage, we'll see the automatic rally according to the Wyckoff method. So that's what happened over here last time when Ripple was in 2022. Stepping into the year end, around October, there was an automatic rally. So let's see what happens this time. Okay, quickly on the Chainlink, same thing. Before we get to the top 10 news, basically we'll cover news including ETHConf, TradeFi at Canton Network, also SuperAI Singapore, World Cup is going to open this week, plus a couple of other key economic data and events that are going to happen. So I'll go through the charts quickly and then we'll move on to the news and see how the media can spin the news. Here, the bigger picture for Chainlink, also transiting from the panic sell whale period to the panic overstage, similar to Ripple. Likewise, let's see for Ondo whether that's the case. So here, Ondo dropped to a certain level, flattening out, and then it has this little spike over here. If I were to guess, given its like very short history that we have over here on the chart, okay, it started somewhere in 2024, finished the distribution cycle, came back down. What I would do is, as of this moment, I would give it these 3 taps just to see whether that's the case. Okay, the panic over stage, I would assume it's this period where the volume dropped back to a pretty low level among the 2 high level range. Okay, so that's for Ondo. And then for Stellar, similar case to Ondo. It got a spike and then now it's returning back. Let's see when it next moves to the testing phase to check out the paper hands and how deep this would go. Because last time the accumulation cycle happened below the light blue key level of 13 cents 80. Okay, you see this light blue line. Most of the times, other than the automatic rally peak and the sign of strength peak, the lowest point was the red line at 0.072. Okay, so that's the case for Stellar. For Ondo, the lowest point last time, or at the beginning, was the 20 cents red line. Okay, finally, before we get to the news, Quant. Quant right now, as I newly opened this chart, I haven't put in any tags yet. So assuming this was the distribution and other quick FOMO, it is now really coming down to the beginning of the accumulation cycle. Looking at this, I would say it's probably just still at the preliminary support stage. All right, it's tempting, okay, to put in the panic over stage and then automatic rally over here. But given the number of charts I've seen, it is not 100% certain yet over here for the case of Quant. And looking at the lows in 2022 and 2024, it may be close. Just that I need a few more weeks and see what's going to happen. It may come down to the red line, 49.5. That's where both lows tested. Sorry, just one thing before the getting to the news. Just the short-term charts quickly. everybody should be dropping outside of the previous downtrend curve. Okay, it was descending at this rate. With the past few days, obviously the rate has changed. The key thing is that we want to check the February 5th and 6th. For the case of Chainlink, it is trying to stay at or above where the February 6th low tested. Okay, that's around 7.2. Okay, this yellow dashed line over here, roughly 7.2. Okay, so if we look to the left, it's already lower than the tariff announcement date. So those are the two nearest references that we get. If it drops lower, it is obviously going to test the levels that we have talked about at the bigger picture. Okay, so I'm not going to repeat. For the case here, okay, we see the accumulation back in 2002, 2003 was bottoming out at around $5. So it shouldn't surprise you if Chainlink come to this point. So Ondo, the daily chart, okay, after this sideways trading, pumping up to challenge the light blue key level, okay, this peak over here, this resistance tested 2 times, now it is coming back down. So what I see is even with this drop over the past few days, it is just within, let's say, medium term, because it lasted for 20 days already, almost a month. So what I am referring to is, let me copy a channel box, because I have some settings over here. I don't want to use the default. The copied channel box inherits those attributes that I've set. So this is the downtrend I'm referring to that started 9th of May. It is now finding support along the bottom, but it can continue to go down, obviously. All right. And the 0.3, the 30 cents yellow T level is the next line to test. It's still a long way. It can travel sideways for quite a while before it tests the ceiling. So there's no urgency for us to cover that now. For the case of Stellar, it is now, bouncing a little after yesterday's, people buying, the bulls buying. All right. So what we have here is that a very short-term downtrend currently we are in, assuming that's how the channel looks like. Given it's dropping to this side, bouncing up. If we turn it to a line, you see why I'm drawing the channel this way. So we see some dates. Okay, over here. This is still possible given the trend coming up. June 7th, just within a day, if the bulls manage to gain sufficient support, they're obviously able to at least expand the channel width, okay? If not breaking outside of it completely, okay? It can trade sideways and, finish this short-term downtrend. The next date, before our next session, definitely, the 9th. 2 more days after the 7th. And this is the second chart, assuming it is staying up between the 0.195, the red key level, and the 0.211. So that means the current range for the past 3 days. It will edge towards this. Again, the 2C's decision, either continue with the downtrend or break outside and make a change to the downtrend, turning into at least a sideways, if not, a V shape. The next key levels are the purple and the blue. You see it can go all the way as low as the light blue key level of 13 cents 80. It's now currently still at a higher level, but February 6th show us that it hasn't get to that point that the previous few crypto projects The Ripple, the Chainlink, and Ondo, some of them has tested this level. October 10th doesn't apply for Stellar. It's way up. Okay, so it's very different in this picture. So last but not least, for Quant, before we get to the news, you already see it is coming down, but it is not touching the February 6th level yet. So I'm going to copy two things. The short-term sideways support as well as the downtrend channel box. So let's draw two lines over here. Between the key levels of 49.5 and 61, we have this downtrend. Actually, it started at the end of May. It is just continuing with the trend. Even with the past few days, the drop of the past few days, it hasn't changed the trajectory. Okay, the descending rate is still intact. This doesn't change the bigger picture. So this date over here points to June 20th. So we still have time. By the time we have our next session, there's still about a week, unless it dropped below the $61. All right? The orange T level I'm talking about. So if it really continue this trend, breaking the orange, assuming this is the new rate of descent, then it will, in the next 3-4 days, by the middle of next week, come to challenge the February 6th low. Right? If that rate of descent doesn't change. This is the longer term, but we see the others has broken that medium-term trend and changed to a steeper rate. That's the case for Stellar as well, just that it hasn't broken the downtrend, the medium-term downtrend support yet. All right, tariff announcement date, October 10th. It was way higher. All right, not as crazy as Stellar, that like way at the hill top. It is somewhere, at the mid or near the waist of the mountain for the case of Quant. So let's see by next session whether it can defend the 61 or is it already testing the 53.5 level. Okay, this line over here. Now we've done all the charts. Let's go to the news. We said there are 10 news we are going to go through, and we're going to look into how the media or the whales can spin the news. So the very first one, ETHConf 2026. Okay, institution focus. Institutions, developers, enterprise, blockchain leaders, they're going to discuss smart contracts, tokenization, real-world asset infrastructure. So how this can be bullish. Wall Street's tokenization revolution is accelerating, could be the headline. And it means, or the media is going to say, institution adoption is moving from theory to implementation finally, and potentially speeding up. And every real-world asset framework announced at the ETHConf will strengthen this narrative. All right, that's when people would think, okay, maybe it's time to get into the tokens that got mentioned. Okay, like in this case for Chainlink and maybe Ondo. Right? How about bearish? What's the negative take? Lots of talk, little adoption. Potential headline. There are a lot of discussions during the conference, but then there's no announcement of the actual adoption during the event. So it doesn't show any commitment, and there's no transaction volume as well. And investor would think, okay, it's just keeping the narrative going without actual business going on. So we will just sit and wait given the current market situation, right? And then now we get to the next news. TradFi leaders gather at Canton Tokenization Summit. So this one, they're going to probably discuss private blockchain infrastructure, tokenized assets, and institutional settlement networks, right? Bullish take. Banks are finally moving on-chain. This could be big, right? It has been a long while that in a lot of jurisdictions, traditional banks are seen as quite hostile to new fintech or crypto. Okay, so this would change the perception and change the sentiments of investor completely, because that can mean massive adoption. Because banks is basically a gate, that leads to a lot of maybe retail or even small, medium-sized enterprises plus institutions, right? And interoperability solutions like Quant and settlement-focused networks like Ripple could benefit. Okay, the banks are very, I'll say, relatively conservative. Some, make bolder moves, but they are very cautious because they are, heavily regulated, right? So they will be looking for, more reliable networks. The bearish spin is that institutions prefer private networks. So even institutions do not want to get onto public blockchain infrastructure. They favor building their own permissioned ecosystem. So if this kind of adoption remains siloed, then the public chain obviously won't get heavy investment, right? So this is the trick over there. Next, of course, US labor data. Final labor costs and earnings data released. So this revision is going to set people's expectation or get people speculate about inflation leading to the yield changes. Positive side is that yield products become more attractive. So stable interest rates, tokenized treasury products, Ondo and other real asset platforms may benefit. All right. Bearish take. Treasury yields change the equation. So the same yield, but different outcome. Same yield narrative, I mean. Rising labor costs could push treasury yields higher and increase market volatility. Okay, as I said just now, treasury yields go higher, same as yesterday's video that we covered. People are going to move towards, safer products, fixed income. Okay, and liquidity getting into crypto maybe later. Okay. Next, SuperAI Singapore 2026. The conference focused on AI, decentralized infrastructure, and autonomous financial systems. Of course, it already sounds bullish, right? AI needs trusted real-world data. We all know, right? LLM, AI, agents, they depend on input to act, right? If without real-world data, they are probably just half as good, or if not 10% as good as they can be, right? So the connection of verifiable and secure real-world data becomes critical in order to drive the desired outcome. Something like Chainlink's Oracle infrastructure is well positioned to serve as the trust layer between AI and tokenized assets. So that's one of the arms that's under development. Second, the downside or the bearish take could be capital is chasing the next buzzword. So people are being skeptical of this narrative. Okay, AI combined with tokenization or real-world assets. They think this is just another buzzword to attract money. And with the mega IPOs of SpaceX and Cloud, etc. So where are you going to put the money, right? We have the solid names like Anthropic, maybe OpenAI, SpaceX, Grok, whatever. Okay, they are obviously going to prioritize towards those more prominent or headlines or spotlight taking names. For this narrative, maybe their second choice. Okay. Europe's largest Bitcoin events, BTC Prague 2026. So developers, regulators, investors across Europe may come together. This sounds good, right? How can this be bearish? How can they spin this? Compliance costs could crush innovation. So again, when we talk about European Union, the ECB, etc., the very first thing you would think of is, regulation. Maybe MiCA or some other regulations like the Apple's case where they are required to create mobile phones with changeable batteries, right? So a lot of these things, as retail or as consumer, it sounds like good things, right? But for the corporates or for innovation, that's probably additional constraints. They have to overcome additional hurdles they have to cross. So stricter regulatory standards may increase operational burdens for blockchain projects. All right, whether the chains are currently compliant and how much effort they have to put in to be compliant becomes a big question. Sometimes you can't, I'm not sure whether there would be one or two chains that's probably not even able to make changes to be able to, meet the standards. They may have to start a new chain and migrate across. So these are the efforts and risk, because it also linked to reputational challenge as well, right? The reputational risk saying, let's say you own chain A, you're the developer running chain A. And if a news comes out saying chain A is not ready for the new regulation coming out from the Euro, so that's going to impact a lot, right? At least you suffer for a period. Even if you say you are already having a solution, ready to deploy in the next month, you're going to suffer for the entire month before you actually deploy, and it proves that the new version works. How about the bullish side? Regulation is creating certainty, much like what happened in the States, right? With the Clarity Act and a lot of other bills. Same case as in Middle East, like the UAE and other countries. Likewise for in the Asia side, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore. All these jurisdictions, they come up with regulatory frameworks that creates clarity. So people, including investors, institutions, are able to calculate the risk if they were to invest in certain projects. So in this case, an example is payment-focused projects like Ripple and XLM may benefit if the discussion highlights compliant cross-border settlement and tokenized asset transfers, right? If people see what's being discussed, or, the narrative, the regulatory narrative that's being shared, more or less, XRP and XLM are already compliant, then they are going to benefit a lot, right? So that's the case. That's the complication with this one. Next, producer price index, again from the US. So this measures the wholesale inflation and serves as an early indicator of price pressure. So we already talked about the yield, so it's going to be straightforward. Risk of environment hurts everything. We know persistent inflation, yield isn't going to go down. Money printing probably not likely. That means reduced liquidity and tightened financial conditions. So even bigger projects may suffer, right? Bullish tech, however, investors rotate towards real yield. If inflation remains elevated, and in this case, tokenized treasury and yield-bearing products may become increasingly attractive relatively to speculative projects, okay? Platforms enabling access to real-world yields could benefit. So this tied with the adoption, right? If there are certain treasury or yield-bearing products already tokenized, okay, those are going to benefit, right? That's what it's talking about over here. Again, here, big event. World Cup is finally starting. Which is your favorite team? Which team you support? Leave a comment. So, in a few days, we're going to see a lot of teams going to compete. And in this space, whether it's sport events or music events, any kind of shows, as long as they sell tickets, as long as they have fans, may it be BTS or Blackpink, whatever group you like, K-pop, there are going to be tokenized items that can be created and sold, right? It sounds bullish, right? So it should be straightforward. Real-world utility moves into the spotlight through these kind of big events, okay? Real-world transactions such as XRP and XLM or other platforms that support these kind of payment, ticketing, digital identity, they are going to benefit. It sounds all good. Why there can be a bearish spin? Let's see. Retail traders leave the market. So major sporting events can temporarily reduce trading activity and online engagement. Lower participation may weaken momentum and reduce short-term demand for crypto assets. So that means just basically people are going to watch the game instead of going to trade. Yeah, that can be true. That's probably the case. Well, whether or not the recent sell-off, besides strategy, MicroStrategy is selling Bitcoin and a couple other reasons, would it be the people that are getting ready to watch the World Cup selling early, and then okay, I'm just going to park my money aside for a while, go watch World Cup for a couple of weeks, and then come back and trade again. They are moving ahead of everybody else. And there may be some people doing that, right? The 8th out of the 10 is the Middle East tension. Of course, we can't leave this behind. It impacts the energy markets, impacts a lot of investment, money flowing into defense stocks. It's going to impact basically farming because of fertilizers and even high-tech products because of some of the precious metals. So we all know if this continues, it is going to be bearish and escalating. I don't even want to just say escalating, because even this being dragged on, not being resolved, it's going to let institutions go heavily reassess where are they going to allocate their capital. And then retail, of course, they're, without clarity, they're obviously panicking. So tokenized assets tied to traditional instruments would obviously experience outflows. What about bullish take? Real-world assets become safe havens. Well, this is the time, probably the best time, since the birth of Bitcoin roughly 17 years ago. The best time with such financial or economical challenge, geopolitical challenge, all coming together. Also with Japanese interest rates being higher. It never happened before in Bitcoin's lifetime, right? So For the other crypto projects, this is the ultimate test. Whether tokenized treasuries, commodities, and gold-backed products may see increased interest will prove the narrative. Okay? Obviously, a lot of people are already questioning the case for Bitcoin. The way I see it is it hasn't dropped below the low of the previous accumulation range for the case of Bitcoin. Even though a lot of altcoins, as we have seen in the beginning in the charts, they are getting close to the lows of the previous accumulation cycles, there is still a difference, because if Bitcoin stays at a higher low, even for the case for Ethereum, that means they still have a case, okay? As long as they don't drop back to like the 2010 or 2015 level. Next, developers gathering at ETHGlobal New York 2026. Are they going to build new tokenization applications, decentralized finance interoperability, and tokenized solution? If they do, they are creating the future financial system and integrating with Chainlink, Ondo tokenization infrastructure could strengthen network utility and attract investment. That means a bigger, healthier ecosystem with more use cases. That means easier adoption. The final stage is whether institutions are going to get on board and use them, like we have discussed earlier. Whether banks or insurance companies, securities companies, all that. Bearish case, hackathons rarely create revenue. So the same situation as the summit. People think these are like buzzwords, marketing, developers events. Yes, they're going to create tools, amazing tools, but at the end, if nobody is using it, right? Nobody translates the developer enthusiasm into actual usage. No transaction volume, no sustainable growth. Okay? That means no case for putting money in. Last but not least, Ripple settlement and stablecoin rules remain in focus. So we talked about the European Union, right? Legal regulatory developments around digital assets, stablecoins, and institutional tokenization frameworks are going to create big impact across the world. Okay, bearish take over there is regulators is still holding the keys, and any unfavorable filing, delay, or restrictive guidance, as we have discussed in the case for Europe, could reinforce concerns about compliance risk. Okay, institutional adoption is going to be delayed. Good side, blue spin, again, clarity, right? If the case like XRP, XLM, and a couple of other real asset infrastructure, they're already compliant, or when the regulation finally comes out, they only need to make a few minor tweaks in order to be compliant, then that's a big bull case for these kind of networks. All right, so let me know in the comment, what's the hardest call for you for the coming week? And are you going to watch World Cup? Which team do you think it's going to win? Remember, you'll find my weekly market write-up on Substack and SLNs. And being a channel member gives you 40 hours earlier access to these videos. All right, so join the other channel members now. Thank you. See you in the next one.